Hello and welcome to our first ever Pitt post-game recap. This one is of the Pitt Umass game, the demolition of the Minutemen last night. Alex, that was a great game. My name is Ryan Berry.
I'm Alex Brown.
And we are your hosts for this podcast.
This is another one of our Steel City Shorts, Ryan, and it's our first breakdown of a game that we've done. And to start off with UMass Pitt, and Pitt thoroughly demolished them last night, as you just said. But I don't think that was anything we didn't expect.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We expected this type of result. I believe on the podcast on Thursday, we both mentioned that it should be about a 50-point performance for Pitt in that game. And I mean, it didn't feel like that game was ever in trouble, even when Pitt couldn't score on the first couple of possessions. I mean, it just felt like the game was in control. And of course, Kenny Pickett came out and he showed up and had a great game.
Kenny Pickett, Ryan, he was very efficient during that game. 27 of 37, 272 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's a solid performance.
Yep, and he had a couple passes dropped also, one by Taysir Mack, which was a sure touchdown, and another one. There were two by Jordan Addison. One of them was a really tough leaping grab that he had halfway down, and then he dropped. The other ones probably should have been caught. So you could say one drop pass with Jordan Addison, but overall, the receiving corps did a good job catching the ball and getting some yards after the catch by great blocking by the wide receivers, which is something that I really like to see. Lucas Krull got a great block on his first touchdown. On Jordan Addison touchdown, Jalen Barden made a great block that allowed that extra time Jordan Addison to speed in the end zone. So that's something that we didn't really see last year. I mean, yards after catch were great, or weren't great, but they're a lot better so far, at least in the UMass game.
I couldn't agree more with that, but I think something that stuck out to me was the balanced approach of the offense. You look at the run game, very balanced all across the board. There were 5 running touchdowns in the game, and they were spread out by 5 different players: Vincent Davis, Israel Abnikonda, A.J. Davis, Daniel Carter, and Nick Patty even rushed in for one. Nick Patty, just to mention this real quick, Nick Patty, Ryan, fantastic in relief, 5 of 5 passing, and then he got a rushing touchdown. That was pretty impressive. So I think if God forbid anything ever happens to Kenny Pickett on the field, I think he's a decent target to look out for.
Yeah, and you mentioned Nick Patty. Nick Patty, 5 amazing. But then Davis Bevel, he probably made one of the best throws of the night to actually a freshman receiver and Jaden Bradley, a true freshman. So we saw actually, speaking of true freshmen, we saw some impact by a couple of true freshmen. Running back Rodney Hammond actually led the team in rushes with 8 carries, and he also led the team in yards with 45. He did not get a touchdown, but he had a pretty good game. And I mean, true freshmen don't get to make that much of an impact. So let's see what Narduzzi lets him do next week. I mean, it's a crowded running back room. It'd be nice to have one of those guys break out.
It really would be, but I think that's going to happen over the next 2 to 3 weeks. When you get these non-conference games out of the way, Tennessee is going to be a big test next week.
It is going to be a big test.
Knoxville. When you go into Knoxville, it's going to be an emotional game, and it's going to be
Johnny Majors Classic.
Exactly, and on 9/11 to make it even further that emotion. It's gonna be a powerful game, but you got to be able to bring some intensity and match their intensity when you go into that game. As Mike Sullivan always said with the Penguins, you got to match their intensity, and they got to do that. And if they do that, they will win that game against Tennessee, who played Bowling Green State University, and they did beat them, but they had to keep their starters in for a little bit longer than Pitt did, Ryan.
Yeah, and I think we'll definitely see a running back break out the next couple of weeks. I mean, they just put everybody in. Vincent Davis actually didn't get into the game until the second half. I mean, they had so many guys running the football. I think they just wanted to see what worked, get a little taste. I think the top 3 definitely should be next week. Should be Izzy. I don't really like putting A.J. Davis up there with that fumble. That was disappointing from him. But I think he put Izzy, Vincent Davis, and then either Daniel Carter or Rodney Hammond. I think you give it to Daniel Carter because he's more of a short yardage type of guy that you can put in. We saw that at the end of the game. But I liked the running attack looked better than it was last year, but I still don't know if it's going to be good enough for Pitt to reach that next level. We hope it will be. I mean, there's probably a lot of vanilla play calling as we expected going into this game. So maybe we didn't see exactly what they would run on the normal offensive game. So the game went overall how we expected to, but we would have liked to see a little more impact from the running game, I think.
Absolutely, because I think what you need to do, and something that was a problem in this game, there's a number of different factors for it, but the time possession was just about even in this game. And when you play a team that's way less talented than you, in particular, in this instance, UMass. You want to get that time of possession more in that 75-25% range, or at
Yep.
least 60-40 at the least. But
I
this
think
was about 50-50, and they need to do better in that next game.
I think one of the reasons for that also is because Pitt just scored really quickly. I mean, they were started at the 8-yard line to finish the second half, and they had a 2 minute drive, only 9 plays. So Kenny Pickett, when he was in the game, the offense just ran down the field as quick as they
Yes.
could. But I did expect the time possession to be a lot more in Pitt's favor. I was kind of surprised when I saw that because it felt like being at the game that Pitt had the ball pretty much the whole time. But then you look at it, I mean, it's like what 30 minutes to 29 minutes. So
Yeah.
I don't know, like 30 seconds and something in that, or I don't know exactly the time, but it was pretty much even, which is a little surprising in a game like this. But yet again, it also could be because Pitt just got down the field so quickly.
It was
So you
30.
talked about,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Sorry about that. It was like 30-48 for Pitt, 29-12 for UMass. So that's pretty darn close.
Yep, and you mentioned that you liked a certain position. I forget exactly what it was, but I can name a couple positions that I like to see from, and then a couple positions that I did not. A little bit of concern, I'd say.
Left a little
Quarterbacks
bit.
obviously
Yeah.
were good with Kenny Pickett. That was expected. Wide receiver room was another room that was expected. One bad drop by Taysier Mack, which is surprising. I mean, it's a senior player. You expect him to be able to get that problem down. I mean, he had that last year drop problem, but that was disappointing because Kenny Pickett gave him a pass right on the money, and that drive actually ended up settling for field goal. So it would have been nice to get a touchdown there.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, it was 23-0 at half, or 20
Yeah.
20-0 at half. I forget exactly.
24. I believe it was
But
24.
it probably should have been 35-0 because they fumbled it when they should have had another touchdown, and then Taysom Mack dropped that touchdown pass as well. Another thing I liked was the tight ends. We haven't had impact from the tight ends in a long time, and Lucas Krull, I mean, he's going to be a big impact this year. He actually tied the amount of touchdowns that were scored by tight ends all of last year. He had 5 receptions, 58 yards, and a touchdown.
That's
And then
crazy.
true freshman, Gavin Bartholomew, Alex. He came in this game with 3 receptions, 21 yards. Lucas Krull actually is rooming with him to kind of mentor him. And I think he's going to be a really great player for Pitt. He's going to make an impact this year, but in the years to come, I think he'll be one of Pitt's best offensive production. Alex, what is one position that you really liked from the game last? Yes. Yeah. I can't talk today. Yesterday.
Yeah. Well, I really like the running back position, but I think that's too vanilla to say. So I think if you look on the defensive side of the ball, you got John Patrician, who was absolutely fantastic last night. And that's a position where you really need some people back there. They lost a lot of people on the defensive side of the ball to the draft last year. You need to have some good starters that can come in, and he was fantastic. 2 sacks. Hopefully he keeps that up against the better and better teams he faces. But that was an encouraging sign last night.
And I like the D-line also. Kalijah Cansey had a sack also. And then they didn't really keep all the guys in the whole entire game. John Morgan didn't really play that much. Top guy Keyshawn Camp only played a little bit at the start of the game. But I liked what I saw from Cansey with that sack early on. He's just a dominant presence. I mean, the offensive line from Umass was just bullied last night for the Pitt defense. And the quarterback, I mean, they ended up doing quick passes. They resorted a lot of those in the game because he was just getting sacked and hit every single time. And I think he was taking quite a bit of a beating. So they ended up doing like quick passes to the side, and they did some screen passes, but those didn't really work either. I mean, nothing really worked. Another position that I liked was the kicking, or not the kicking, the punting. Kirk Christodoulou, I mean, he had 2 punts. They were good punts. They were booming punts, a lot better than UMass's punts, which were kicked 30 yards and just rolled the rest of the way. But I mean, he's a senior, so hopefully another good year for him because that's really good. But another special teams position that I didn't like was the place kicking. Of course, we saw a missed extra point, and that I don't know. This isn't.
Unacceptable.
Yep. Go ahead.
You're right. Keep on going. It's unacceptable.
You just don't feel comfortable when one of those guys is on up to kick. I mean, it was like a 30-yard field goal and was made by Sam Scarden, but I just didn't expect him to make it. I was like, okay, he missed an extra point. He's not going to make this. But Castleman, he felt like when he was on the field that you were going to make almost every single kick that he trotted on the field for.
Until he didn't.
Until he missed an extra point against Boston College right after he kicked a 59-yarder to send it into overtime.
Yeah, that's how it goes sometimes. But I'm concerned by that kicking position because you can't have it by committee. When you have a guy that comes out, kicks 2 extra points, and then the other guy kicks 5 extra points and he misses one. I mean, You can't have it like that. You can't have it separated like that throughout the game. That's too much. You need to have one guy that you can turn to, and that can be your guy the whole season. You can't just switch in and out every other drive, however you feel like it. You can't do that. It's not how it's going to work.
We just kind of recap the game. Now let's look at some of the highlights from that game. The first touchdown, of course, was scored by Lucas Kroll. Alex, as I mentioned, he's going to make a big impact this year. So I was really happy to see that touchdown there.
Absolutely. He was your guy that you pointed out in the podcast the other day. You saw that was going to propel this offense to new heights. And so without further ado, let's turn it over to the highlight.
Those trips in 4 games. Here's Pickett. Fake the handoff. Dumps it. Lucas Kroll. Touchdown, Pittsburgh.
So as we mentioned on that play, the blocking there by Taysier Mack allowed him to have just walk into the end zone. So we mentioned that the receivers had a great blocking, and that continued on the first play of the game, or the first touchdown of the game there.
That looks so easy for the Pitt offense right there in the red zone. In the 5, I think it was a 5-yard line. It looked like there, and that was just easy rollout by Pickett. And the more that offense moves, the more they get the play action, the better. You have to have that threat of the run game though to have that great play action. But the better the play action and the more they do it, I think the better the offense will be. Because Kenny Pickett is incredible when he's moving. He can move and he can throw easily, and that's exactly what they did right there.
I think they've
exactly
options in the red zone, especially. I mean, they have the running backs of Izzy and the Vincent Davis. You never know what they're going to do. Pickett can roll out and do a run, and you got a lot of playmakers with tight ends and wide receivers. A lot of stuff they haven't had in the past, like tight ends. Tight ends are pretty much a red zone type of, like if you have a tight end, that's pretty much your go-to guy in the red zone. A lot of.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Or like if you look at the NFL, they only have that one wide receiver that they go to all the time when you're in the NFL in the red zone. But in the college, I believe, I think it's more based towards the tight end. You don't see, I think the tight end is starting to come back more and more across football in general, because you need that kind of guy that can, and the tight ends are becoming more athletic now than they ever have been before. They're tall and lanky, and they can run like the wind. And when you have guys like that in your team that can do that and be your safety blanket as they run underneath, or they can just be there for you when you need them. And that's the type of guy you need Lucas Kroll to be. And every team wants that guy on their team in the NFL or college. But now that you have that guy on Pitt, and hopefully if he can stay healthy, that's the big question mark. If he can stay healthy, that's a huge asset for Pitt.
Yep, and speaking of red zone touchdowns, Alex, let's look at Jordan Addison's quarter 1 score.
Down from the 12. Pickett, here's a quick throw. Addison got a nice block, and he'll score. Jalen Barton, who had the big 47-yard.
So you see.
And that's another, exactly. Another example of a great block there. Without that block, and how about the throw by Kenny Pickett? You throw that a couple, like that was about, let's say 8 inches to the right. If you threw that 8 inches more to the right, that would have been
intercepted.
Deflected or intercepted for that matter. Exactly.
And then that block by Barton, as we mentioned, the wide receivers have been blocking a lot more. And then Jordan Addison just turns on the Jets. I mean, he was like a lightning bolt running into the end zone, and he got another easy score. So those are the only 2 highlights that we're going to show because it's taking up a lot of time here. But those are the 2 plays that I really wanted to look at because of the blocking by the wide receivers on that play. Lucas Kroll got the block from Taysier Mack, and then Jordan Addison got the block from Jalen Barton.
I want to ask your thoughts, Ryan, real quick, because we didn't talk a lot about the defense. Your thoughts on the defense?
The defense looked good overall. The secondary was a little shaky towards the end of the game, but that was because they didn't have all the starters in. Rashad Battle didn't have the game that I expected him to. I thought Marquise Williams looked good. Eric Hallett looked good with that strip fumble there, which was really good play after kind of a blown coverage. He got him as he was bringing him to the ground. He grabbed that football and just ripped it out of him. That was a really big turnover there because Umass had kind of like they're getting some energy, getting some momentum, and he wanted that game to kind of stay a blowout and not make it like you don't want UMass getting like 21 points or 14 points. I mean, that just doesn't look good.
Exactly, and they're 7 points I'm okay with.
2 turnovers for Pitt wasn't great. One was a very bad snap by center. I don't know exactly who was playing center at that time. It was in the third quarter. Nick Patty was in, and I don't know how Pitt didn't recover that. Rodney Hammond and Nick Patty both jumped on it. And the next thing you know, UMass is saying they got the ball, but they were in the red zone there. I think they were at the 10-yard line, and that led to the only UMass touchdown of the game.
4 fumbles by Pitt in a game. 2 of them were lost. That's unacceptable. You cannot have that amount of fumbles, because if you play a team that's better than UMass, you're going to play teams that are much better than UMass, and you better be able to hold on to that ball both when you catch it and both when you take it on a run or on a snap, for that matter. You better be able to hang on to that ball, because that's going to cost you against better teams.
AJ Davis had the other lost fumble, and I think we mentioned that earlier. But Pitt total yards, 598 yards compared to UMass's 209. I mean, when you have that many more yards than the opposing team, it's always a good day, and you expect to see the result that you did. And that game could have easily been like 70 points put on the board for Pitt. I mean, they won 51-7, but it should have been more actually. But you'll take that type of victory any day.
Your thoughts going to see Tennessee next week?
Wow, I think it's gonna be a dogfight. Tennessee fans think it's gonna be easy. Pitt fans think it's gonna be easy. But I think both those teams are gonna show up, and it's gonna be. I mean, I think Pitt is the better team. I think if it was played at Heinz Field, Pitt would probably win that one by, I think, double digits. But now you're going to Tennessee with 100,000 fans screaming at you. It's just going to be a tough atmosphere to play in. Pitt doesn't play in that type of atmosphere very often in the Coastal with a lot of teams that they play. And I think it's going to take some, especially with the sophomores. There's a lot of sophomores playing. The sophomores didn't play in front of anybody last year. So that might take them a little time to get used to. But hopefully in practice, they're blaring that speaker system with crowd noise all week in practice to get the players a lot used to that. But I think it should be a good game. I think Pitt wins in the end, but I think it's going to be a dogfight.
I think this when your leaders step up. Kenny Pickett, he's got to step up in this game. You have your leaders, the wide receiver on defense too, wide receiver position, defensive positions. You got your leaders there. You got to step up. They know what it takes to win. They've been in these atmospheres before, as you said, and other big colleges atmospheres, and they got to be able to channel that and what it takes to win in those situations. And you got to be able to channel that in this game. But I think Pitt does pull it out. I think it is by double digits. I think they win by 10 to 14 points.
Yeah, that could definitely be, because Pitt is a better team than Tennessee. They are.
Absolutely.
They just are.
Tennessee just fired their coach last year. Jeremy Pruitt just got fired.
Josh Heupel knows how to run an offense, so I think the offensive production for Tennessee is something to worry about a little bit. The run game, they got to make sure that Pitt can stop the run, and the Pitt stopped the run against UMass, so they got to be able to keep it up against a much better Tennessee team. But I think it'll be a fun game to watch. And if you can get that W, I mean, then you got Western Michigan at home. Western Michigan's a lot better than people give them credit for. But then that should be a win. And then, of course, you got the New Hampshire game. I don't know anything about New Hampshire, but that should be a win.
Yeah, nobody knows anything about New Hampshire.
I just saw what New Hampshire did this week. They won by 6 points against – I forget who they played already. But
I don't know who they can beat by 6
Nobody good.
Yeah.
And so you look at that. If you beat this Tennessee game, win this Tennessee game, you should be 4-0 going into play. Yeah. And then you got Georgia Tech, who Jeff Sims.
5-0. Yeah.
Jeff Sims exited the game in a sling, so their only good player, their only star player, left the game, and they also lost to Northern Illinois. He went 0-6 last year, so that should be a win. And then you got, I think, the toughest stretch of the year with Virginia Tech, Clemson, Miami.
That's gonna be a tough stretch, and I think you'd be lucky. You're not lucky, but I think you'd be happy if you pulled out 2 wins from that stretch.
I would be ecstatic if you can get 2 wins. I mean, if you get, let's say those 2 wins are Virginia Tech and Miami, you're 7-1 going into 7-1 going into the biggest stretch of the season, and you probably already got a pretty good hold on the Coastal, and then all you got to do is get that UNC game, and you pretty much got the Coastal locked down. So it's going to be fun to watch. We're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves talking about 7-1, but I think it's a possibility, and I really hope Pitt executes this year, because I know they can. They got the talent. It's just about execution, game day execution, and let's hope that happens for Pitt.
And that's our recap. That's our breakdown for this for the Pitt UMass game. We'll set you up again for Pitt Tennessee on our next podcast. That'll be this week. It'll be either released on Wednesday or Thursday. We'll determine that, and we'll tweet that out at a later date. This will be posted on Instagram. This will be posted on YouTube as well. And Ryan, it was a pleasure doing this with you, and hopefully we can do this more often, buddy.
Yep, great doing this again. Hopefully we'll get to do this pretty much every game now, barring any conflicts, but it should be fun to do. We might try to do this for Steeler games as well, depending on when the Steeler games are and how much time we have to be
And
able to.
this upcoming podcast will be our Steelers set up for the season, as their first game will be this upcoming Sunday against the Bills.
Yep, and we'll talk with the NFL as well. And we got a little bit of a special segment with you from Chalkboard, a betting company, and that should be fun. We'll give you more details on that as the week approaches. So, thank you, Alex, for doing this with me. It was another great podcast. I don't know, should we call it a podcast or should you call it a short? What do you want to call it?
We'll call it short, but this is a little long. We'll call it short.
Yeah. But yeah, it was good doing this with you. And remember, we are your home for everything Pittsburgh sports.